Hey everybody, we're back with another episode of the SEO Leadership Podcast. Today we have Henry Smith, the head of SEO at Dark Horse, an agency based in the Manchester area. How's it going today, Henry?
Yeah, good. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. To kick things off, I'll just talk about, I know you guys are, I was speaking to John at the start, and you're going through a bit of a restructuring in terms of the team structure. How important is team structure, and what are the sort of the common mistakes that sort of agencies face?
Yeah, so basically when I joined Dark Horse, so I've been there for just over a year and a half now. And so when I joined, we were basically split into three very siloed approaches. So we had technical, content, and digital PR. Obviously from an account management and from an overarching point of view, it's obviously important that we have people within the team that have that overall SEO knowledge. So basically what we're doing at the moment is we're sort of moving, so we understand the importance of still having the specialists in each area. So it's very difficult to employ somebody who's great at technical SEO, great at content, and great at digital PR. However, there are really good generalists out there. So with the most recent hires, so we hired somebody a couple of weeks ago, and what we was looking for in that hire was somebody who's obviously more rounded. And so the approach moving forward, I think, is somebody who can do content to a good level, do technical to a good level. However, they can still lean on the technical and content specialists if needed. So yeah, having that overall knowledge and sort of more generalist approach is what we're going for now. And I think that's sort of important when you're looking at things like people who can manage accounts, people who can look at strategy, reporting, and obviously coming into looking at how campaigns are performing and things like that as well.
Excellent.
Awesome. So we've been noticing that Dark Horse has been hiring a lot and growing out the team, especially with you being there for a year and a half. We can appreciate that you guys have been growing quite a bit. Last week on our webinar, Josh and Darius chatted about the importance of identifying the right time to hire and how that's such a hot topic at the moment, and not just basically identifying when you've got the work coming in, but rather to identify that in the forecasts. How do you guys tackle the approach of sort of identifying when's the right time to hire, when to grow out the team? And
Yes.
how do you include that into your, maybe quarterly or yearly plan?
Yeah, so it's probably one of the most difficult tasks for us. It's basically at the start of the year we set out a forecast basically, and we knew at each point when we need to hire. So basically, for every 110 hours that we bill, we need to have a new person within the team. So that's basically how we forecast it. However, it's quite difficult to forecast that because we are well ahead of our targets for the year now. So the original plan obviously for us was, we was going to hire at 4 points throughout the year, whereas now it's looking like that may actually be, more than that. So I think it's probably one of the most difficult elements in terms of planning that out, just because, especially as an agency, it's quite difficult to know when you're going to have new clients coming in. So with our churn rates, the number of clients that we lose, that's generally quite low. So we can kind of forecast how many clients we'll lose in a year, which is obviously important for team planning. However, new business coming in is obviously more difficult to plan for. So it might be the case that we'll have a 50-hour retainer coming in on a 12-month contract, so we can plan for that. However, there is sort of a lag. So I know that we've hired with yourself recently, and with that person, there's a 3-month notice period. So obviously with that, it's difficult to plan. Does that person have a 1-month notice period, 2-month, 3-month? So that's one of the biggest struggle for us really in terms of planning, just because we don't know when people are going to come in. So I suppose from our side, it's just preempting when we're going to need somebody and planning sort of a couple of months in advance. So obviously it costs the business, we need to pay those wages for an additional couple of months. However, I think it's better than not being able to take on new work and people who want to work with, basically.
Definitely. And you guys are sort of hybrid in around sort of the Manchester area. There's quite a lot of sort of big agencies around there. Manchester's probably one of the most competitive places for SEO. How do you guys do you think, because you are sort of quite unique in your sort of brand image and stuff like that, does that help attract candidates, or how do you find sort of the competitiveness of the candidate market?
Yeah, so we find that, I've obviously worked at multiple different places, and I think that Dark Horse is a really good place to work. And I think that does come across when we're sort of interviewing candidates as well. So I think that when we're hiring, I think the brand story and the types of clients that we work with and what we want to achieve I think that sort of comes through, and it means that it's much easier for us to hire. So for example, like the role that we was recruiting for previously, there's multiple candidates who basically was all holding off on all the job offers for Dark Horse. And I think that sort of like shines through in terms of like the types of clients we work with, our ambitions, but also like we've got like a really strong team as well. So I think that a lot of people, especially in SEO, when they're in sort of like the more junior phase, like if you've been doing SEO for like 1 to 3 years, you need to be around people who are great at the job and know what they're doing. And I think like, at Dark Horse, we've got like probably one of the best teams that I've worked in and seen. So I think that, looking at sort of like progression for people when they're coming on board, I think that it's quite easy for us to hire just because we do have sort of like that great messaging. We do have like great clients that we work with, and also we have a really strong team that they can learn from as well.
Yeah, brilliant. And I know obviously hiring's one of the hardest parts, but keeping them equally just as hard.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned the likes of like progression and training. Is that stuff that you encourage just to make sure that people are sort of loyal and keep sort of the interest there?
Yeah. So we do like again like quite well at like retaining staff, and I think like the main point for that really is that again like we do have that training program in place, and we encourage that people like, so basically we don't have like a dedicated like training budget. So that's what some places do it, and it's how previous places that I've worked that have done it. However, like what we generally say is that if it's something that you want to do and something that you want to learn, like just come to me, ask, and we'll never say no, really. So yeah, I think like in terms of like training, obviously like day-to-day is really important, like hands-on. We want to get people hands-on as quickly as possible. So yeah, it's like generally like we've had like 4 or 5 new hires since I've joined, and I think like when we're looking at new hires, when they come on board, we like to get them involved straight away, and I think that's really the best way to learn, really.
Definitely.
Just on the topic of sort of onboarding, could you tell us a little bit about how your transition into Dark Horse was, and with the new teammates that have been brought on, what sort of onboarding processes have you guys sort of developed throughout the year that you've been with them?
Yeah, so in terms of onboarding, like, I think like it depends on obviously the level that somebody comes in at. So like if we're employing for a manager, it will be obviously different than if we're employing for like a junior exec, for example. However, I think like in terms of onboarding, I think like in terms of like the first couple of weeks, obviously you don't want to throw like too much at somebody. You don't want to scare them away. You don't want to sort of give them too much to do and too much responsibility too quickly. So I think like introduce them to like the processes, like what we do, how we do it, and then start slowly introduce them into sort of like clients. So we'll basically introduce somebody onto a client maybe 2 weeks into being with us. And then we'll slowly sort of like start to increase that as time progresses. So yeah, I think like in terms of onboarding, like we have sort of what we call it the Dark Horse Bible. So this is like all of our processes. R&D John, he has like, we'd had our quarterly update yesterday. He literally like held up the book to everybody and was like, look at this, how great it looks. Like a big like thick book, everything that we do. So yeah, so all our processes that are in there. But yeah, we have like specific training programs that we'll put people on. We have, depending on like obviously where they're coming in at. We have like the Bible in terms of like how we do things, what we do. And then like, we have like sub team managers as well. So we'll have like head of content, digital PR and tech. So they are mainly responsible for like bringing people in and sort of like taking them under the wing and training them in terms of what we do for their specific area. For more like generalist SEO hires, that comes under myself. And yeah, we have a process in place where we basically look at training on the job, but also like there's things like general like training programs online that we'll do as well.
Brilliant. And Henry, just looking through your experience, you obviously started off, I think, agency, and then went in-house for a couple of years, and then came back with Dark Horse to agency side. What sort of brought you back to agency? Because I know usually the sort of the progression path is agency into like sort of like an in-house role where people get a bit more comfortable and then sort of stay there. And was there anything about Dark Horse or agency that you missed?
Yeah, so when I was looking to move on from like the previous in-house roles, so I've been in-house then for around like 4 years. So it's quite like in SEO, that's quite a long time. And I think I was just missing sort of like the agency sort of like life sort of thing. So like the fast pace, like working across like multiple different clients. So I think like the main thing, like there's definitely benefits to both. So I'd say like in-house, like you have like so much time, you can, you have your initiatives, you understand the business in depth. You understand everything that's going on within the business. You're probably exposed to areas that you wouldn't do at an agency, like things like merchandising, for example, and people who work on that campaign for TV ads, which you obviously wouldn't get at like a traditional agency. However, I think like what you miss in-house is working day to day with like all the great people. So I think like at Dark Horse, like obviously like there's people that I'm learning from every day. It's like head of tech, head of content. I learn so much from them guys. And I think in-house, you can sometimes that you have to go out and find that information. Whereas when you work in an agency, you're surrounded by these people. So I think that, day to day, you just learn so much more in an agency. And that's why I wanted to go back to agency side. I think it's, again, like at Dark Horse, like what excites me most is being more involved in like the pre-sale process and really growing out the department. I'll say you have a bigger team you'd have internally. So like, internally, it was like 1 or 2 people. Whereas obviously agency side, we're a team of 10, which obviously continuously growing. So that like really appealed to me. I think the main thing for me really in-house versus agency, obviously there's benefits to both. But for me, I just really liked like the agency and being around other SEOs, working on a variety of different clients. That's really what appealed to me. And then I suppose like Dark Horse's story as well is what appealed to me, particularly about Dark Horse. The ambition from John in particular about like really growing the company and hitting targets and taking it from one level to another level on a consistent basis. That's really like what appeals to me, really.
Love it. And I notice, am I right in saying you still do a bit of freelance as well?
So like in terms of freelance, I do not much freelance anymore, really. It's more like on an ad hoc basis. It's more like consultancy based. So like in-house teams where they might come to me and say, like, can you give me advice on this, for example? I'll just bill them per hour. So from a freelance point of view, like I don't want to do a huge amount anymore. Like I don't really have time to do it. Like I'm fully like committed to Dark Horse, really. There's not a huge amount from a freelance point of view that I do. However, like you do occasionally get people approaching you and saying, okay, like, can you give me advice on this? Providing there's no conflict of interest with anything that we're doing, like clients we're working with. Generally, like if somebody comes to me, like last week, somebody connected me on LinkedIn. Generally, I'll just pass that through to the sales team at Dark Horse, because that's sort of like I say, day to day. That's what I want to grow more than the freelance side.
And as like a head of SEO, would you encourage your junior staff to take on sort of a freelance client to be testing if they're a little bit smaller?
Yeah, like I think it's interesting. So when you're hiring, obviously there's going to be like potential conflict of interest if they're doing like freelance projects with like what we're doing. So we wouldn't, like, we encourage people to do their own thing. So I suppose a good example is that we have somebody in like the technical SEO department, and they are really proactive. Like it's called Javier, he's great. And what he basically does is like in his own time, he'll build his own websites, and like he'll test things on his own sites. And that is like a huge quality in terms of like somebody who's got an active interest. They're not just there for the 9 to 5 and the paycheck. They are literally, they're actively going out and doing their own thing on the side. And for me, when I'm hiring, if I see somebody that's, they've got like their own side projects, or they're doing something else outside of work. I know it's not possible for everybody, a lot of people have commitments. However, like I do think that it can potentially make you stand out as a candidate if you're looking at, if you're in a hiring position and somebody's doing their own thing, they've got their own site, they've built their own like SEO, and they're doing PPC, and they're doing a lot of different things. I think like that does definitely appeal. It does make it, make that candidate more appealing to us in particular.
Brilliant.
I'm notoriously known for doing the 2-part question, but the first thing I wanted to touch on was side projects. And for a junior or someone that's just getting into SEO, do you have any tips on how to start that first side project? And the second part of it is, when you're looking to hire, what specific qualities outside of a side project do you look for?
Yeah, so I feel like first question, side projects, I think I'd just say like just build your own website, test things. I suppose with SEO, a lot of it, and what we encourage internally is that we do test things. We don't want to just, like, for example, there's so much information out there that's just incorrect. And there's a lot of times where the team will say, like, read something on LinkedIn, for example, and they'll say, oh, why are we not doing this? And then like we're like, oh, actually we've tested that and it didn't work, so we're not going to do it. And there's things like, for example, like things that Google say you don't need to do anymore. So things like disavowing like poor links, for example. Like I say, we've tested this. We've done it for clients who have like really bad link profiles when they come to us. We've tested disavowing them, and we've just never really seen the impact of it. So I suppose like it's the same case for side projects. It's a case of just what have you done? How have you tested things, and like do you have that like forensic approach? And so what was the second part of the question? I forgot about that one.
When you're looking to hire outside of side projects, what else do you look for, especially bringing them into Dark Horse?
Yeah. So I suppose like when we were hiring like this time, so probably the best using the most recent example, we were looking again for someone who's like an all-round SEO. And I suppose like in terms of like what we were looking for outside of that, it was somebody who had like relevant experience really. So there was a lot of candidates who were coming to us who had been at like bigger agencies, and basically all they were doing was like, for example, like briefing content, or just doing like keyword research, or just doing tech audits. Whereas, with an agency of like our size, we need somebody who can do more than that. And I suppose that's sort of like the value as well of being at a mid to small to mid-sized agency, as opposed to a huge like, density, for example, is that you get exposed to so much more. So I suppose that's the case for like more experienced candidates. I suppose like for more junior candidates, which I suppose is more difficult for them to set themselves apart. I suppose it's more just like that eagerness and that personal qualities, as opposed to like actually knowledge of SEO. So like, can you see in them like the fire that they want to really learn and want to do well, and do they meet our values? Like, do they have integrity, trust, forensic approach? So we have like 5 core values, and like when we're hiring, we look for those values in people. Ultimately, if they don't meet our values, then they're probably not suited to us. Like they might be great elsewhere. However, like we're very particular in sort of like what we look for in candidates. I'm sure like Darius, in terms of like when you were helping us recruit for the most recent role, it's probably like a bane of your life. However, I think that when we're looking for somebody, like we're not going to just like hire somebody just because we need to hire. Like they have to be the right person, they have to have the right personal qualities, and they have to have the right attitude, I suppose, in terms of ability to want to grow with us, and like really be invested in Dark Horse. Like the best stuff at Dark Horse, obviously, like, they want to be part of the company, they share values with us. Obviously, they have to be great at the job. But I think like the main thing for us is those real personal qualities and like how they shine through.
Yeah, big time. Sorry, should I just a quick one on that? Me and Josh were actually talking about this yesterday. We find that agencies would far rather have somebody who's maybe like a 7 out of 10 in terms of SEO ability, but like a 9 or a 10 out of 10 in terms of a culture fit, rather than the other way around, because you can train the hard skills, but the soft skills are sort of come more naturally. It's harder to actually train that into somebody.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like because we've got like so much knowledge internally ourselves, like we have so many people that you can learn from. I think like what's really important for us, like I say, is those personal qualities, and then how they can actually learn from the more senior people within the team who have got like this great knowledge and they have like so much in their head. It's just like how do they share that and how do they put that across to other people within the team. I think that's like a really key point for us, and soft skills, as opposed to like I say, the actual knowledge that they have.
Yeah. Brilliant. Sorry, Sha.
I just wanted to put you on the spot a little bit and ask if you had any examples of when you were interviewing candidates on a successful candidate that sort of particularly stood out. How did they sort of show those qualities that you guys were looking for?
Yeah, so I think like with like successful candidates, I think that the like I say, the main thing that we look for is like I'll literally like when we're interviewing people, I'll have like a checklist of like, do they hit our 5 values? And like as they say things we're going through, I'm like, yeah, check, tick that one.
Okay.
And I think that's like the key thing for us. And I suppose like I say, there's some candidates who come through like they have like 7-8 years experience, but they're just not the right fit for us. Like they don't have the overall knowledge that we need, and they maybe been like quite siloed in terms of what they're doing. Whereas obviously what we're looking for is somebody who can do a bit of everything. Like even if they're focused more on say content, like we do want somebody who can also have a bit of knowledge of technical, a bit of knowledge of digital PR. Also we can train those areas, and we want like well-rounded people. I suppose like when we're interviewing, like the main thing for me is like how can we train them, like first and foremost, like, and like how like much will they like embrace everything that we're sort of like putting onto them. But also, I think with SEO, like you have to go away and want to learn yourself as well. Like there's things that, you know, day to day that I will be like, I'll get asked a question. I'm like, actually, I don't know the answer to this. Like I have to go out and ask it. So yeah, I'll like Google's your best friend, isn't it? Like you can, there's answers are everywhere. So yes, if you don't know the answer, like don't be scared to like say, actually, I don't know the answer to this. And then, yeah, I suppose like the integrity of that as well, like really helps us when we're hiring.
Brilliant. And just to move it across into sort of the leadership side of things, was there like a noticeable difference in leading an in-house team compared to an agency team? And was there any sort of like imposter syndrome moving across to Dark Horse?
I wouldn't say like too much. Like I'm not really like the sort of person who like sit and like worry about things too much. So yeah, I'm not like I wasn't like scared about like jumping into like a dark horse. However, there was definitely like things that I had not done before. So things like pitching to new clients, like I'd done it like for like 2 or 3 different clients previously. However, obviously in-house, you're not going out and you're not doing like pre-sale audits and you're not pitching to new clients, which is a big part of the role. So it was a much bigger team as well. So like I say, previously I'd only managed 2 people. Whereas at Dark Horse, you know, you then have a team of 10 who you're responsible for, and you know, if something does go, like if somebody does come with a problem, you're like, actually, like, could I have prevented that? And I suppose it does ask like a few questions of yourself as well. But yeah, I think like the process was like quite seamless. There was quite good processes already in place. Like there's people within the team who had basically like in between myself and my predecessor at Dark Horse, like they'd been, you know, holding the ship together basically. So I could definitely lean on them. And they're still the company today. So again, like I still lean on them quite a lot. I think it's quite important to be able to trust your team and lean on them, and also like they help you day to day as well.
Definitely. And in terms of like your leadership style, was there anybody whenever maybe you were a junior SEO that sort of looked up to or like taught you in a certain way, and have you sort of brought that into what you're doing now at Dark Horse?
Yeah, so I suppose like at my sort of second role, that was probably where there's probably a lot of people that sort of like inspired me and like really helped me along. So I think like with at the agency, there was like my manager, and there's like a senior exec called Sam as well. So like I shadowed him a lot. Like he taught me a lot. He taught me basically a lot of like technical SEO knowledge. So yeah, I think like he's got like his own agency in Manchester. It's like quite a small agency. But yeah, I think like when we're looking at like who taught me along the way, I think like that role in particular was really important for me, because that was the role basically in between like my first role and then sort of like going into more of a managerial role at WeBuyAnyCar, where I was overseeing like obviously their SEO, and they're a huge company. Yeah, I think like that was probably the most important role. They were probably like the 2 most important people in terms of like my development.
Brilliant.
In terms of progressing within your career to a head of SEO, do you have any advice to SEO managers maybe that are looking into coming into a head of SEO position? Do you have any advice towards them in terms of maybe mindset shifts or particular skills that you found prominent when you moved into your head of SEO role?
Yeah, so I think like the main thing really is obviously that with a head of SEO role, there's a lot of responsibility on your shoulders. So you're responsible not only for like results for clients, you're responsible for people, which is obviously a completely different side of things. Like when you get into SEO, you want to do it because you want to deliver good results for clients, or you want to deliver good results for the in-house team you work for. Whereas then when you move into more like a head of role, like you're then responsible for processes, you're then responsible for training, you're responsible for keeping people happy within the team as well. So there's a lot that comes into it. I'd say like I wouldn't jump into it too quickly. So a lot of people want to sort of like progress, and they want to, you know, be at the like ahead of SEO straight away, so to speak. But yeah, I'd say like be ready for it. Yeah, make sure that you're ready to sort of like manage people. Make sure you're ready for the responsibility. Make sure that you're not going to be, you know, say for example, if somebody comes to you, for example, and says like, why is this like this? And like, it's probably not going to be a nice conversation. Like, be prepared for that. And I suppose, yeah, like have a bit of like a hard head on your shoulders. Like, don't be too taken back by things. Don't take things too personally. And yeah, I suppose that's probably the key thing really for me is, yeah, like make sure that you've got like larger goals that you're aligned to, as opposed to just like taking things like small things too personally and too much on your shoulders sort of thing.
Excellent, excellent. And you mentioned about sort of keeping people happy. That's obviously very difficult. I know you guys have a good culture and stuff. What do you sort of do to like sort of keep the team motivated and make sure everybody is sort of on that track to achieving those goals?
Yeah, so I think like for me, like I speak mostly to sort of like the head of sub departments, and obviously they like then fall things down to their team. So I suppose like really it comes down to like, do people enjoy the role? Like we don't want people to be doing like things day to day where they're not actually enjoying what they're doing. And then on the other side of things, like keep people happy. Like I suppose it comes more down to like the company as a whole. Like, do people enjoy coming into the office? Is it a nice environment? You know, do we have interesting projects ongoing? Like nobody wants to work on boring projects. If we had every client was just like a project where no one was really interested in invested in that, so that's important. So like when we're looking at things like clients that we bring on board, like we are quite picky about like who we work with. We want to work with people who we see potential and we can grow. And we want to take people from 7 to 8 figures to 9 figures. So that's really like a key for us. And I suppose that then falls down to the team to keep them happy, working on things that they want to work on, I suppose.
Definitely.
Awesome. Yeah, this was sort of like a more personal interest question, but your culture at Dark Horse is very prominent and very interesting. How do you guys prioritize company culture and team culture on maybe a day-to-day basis or a week-to-week basis within your team?
Yeah, so I suppose it all comes sort of like from the top down. So like I'd say we as a company, like I've probably not seen a company that's as transparent as Dark Horse. So like, say for example, like yesterday we had a quarterly update. Like John went through and sort of like from top down was like, this is what money we're making, this is what profit we're making, this is what we project moving forwards. So I suppose like transparency is a big thing for us, and like integrity and understanding that everybody really understands like what's going on at Dark Horse, what we're trying to achieve. So yeah, I suppose that's really the main thing. I suppose that everything comes from like the top down in terms of culture. And I think like in terms of building that culture, like I say, it all comes down to like obviously the heads of departments, but also from everybody within the team. We have to have that motivation. We have to have people in the team who want to do well, who want to grow, who want to be better. And I think that again that comes back to who we hire, who's in the team. And I suppose that's why it's so important to hire the right people, but also like the people within the team already. I think like in the past I've done a great job at hiring the right people. So obviously there's a lot of people who like I've not hired personally at Dark Horse, but like, if they were to interview at Dark Horse tomorrow, I'll probably still hire them. So I suppose it's great that like you inherit a good team. And I think like in terms of culture, like it's personal qualities, and so it's like who do you want to be around in the office? Who like if you're sat next to someone on one day, like is it good to be sat next to them? Like are they chatty? Do they like help you? Do they make you better as a person? I mean, like those are the sort of things that we look for, and I think that's like when you say about culture, like every company will say, and especially a lot of agencies will be like, "Oh, look how great we are! We've got like a pool table in the office." Like, nobody uses it, so it's like, I think like from our side, it's more a case of like we don't want to be like the traditional like agency where it's like, look at us, we've got pool table in the office. Look at us at like these events. We're getting these awards, and look at how happy we are getting this award that we paid for. It's more a case of like actually valuing the work that we do. I suppose that's like really key for us in terms of like we pride ourselves on the work we do, not sort of like shouting about what we do as well.
Brilliant, love that. And then just before we sort of wrap up, moving into sort of a new management position, is there any sort of advice you would give somebody to sort of incorporate into their first maybe 30 or 90 days?
Yeah. So I think like if you're moving into like management position where you've got like people within the team, I think like the first thing that you really need to do is understand like how are they currently working. So like what are their current processes? Like is there anything that you don't want to go in day one and say like, okay, change this, because you're going to get kickback. People are used to doing things in the way that they're doing things. But I suppose in terms of like what I would look for if I was starting a new role today, it would be okay, what are the current processes, review them. Like, is there anything that we would potentially change? Have that discussion in terms of like why you would maybe want to change things. Look at the team. is the team set up correctly? Is there anything that, is somebody potentially like in the wrong role, for example? So like we changed someone from like the technical SEO lead, and now he's sort of like more of like an SEO lead in general, so like more of a generalist. So like, yeah, processes, people, and then I suppose if it's agency side, like who are the clients? Who are the clients that you really need to focus on first and foremost? And yeah, like really understanding the day-to-day, like who are the clients, who are potentially, the ones that need more attention, and then sort of like who do you assign to that role, in terms of overseeing that. So yeah, I suppose it's a case of like trying to understand as much of business as possible, understanding the people team, and then also understanding like what are the processes in place at the moment and what potentially needs to change to improve things moving forwards.
Brilliant. Yeah, well, that takes us over just the half an hour mark. I really appreciate you coming on, Henry. There was a lot of good value in there. Is there anything you'd like us to share? And we'll put obviously all your socials on, everything leading to Dark Horse, but anything else you'd like us to?
Not really. I suppose like the main thing for us is like, if you're a candidate looking for a new role, like we're constantly hiring like SEO, PPC, paid social marketing. Yeah, so I suppose like from that side, like if you're interested, obviously follow us on the socials. All new posts on LinkedIn, for example. Like I say, if you're in-house client and you want advice, feel free to reach out to us. But yeah, I suppose. Yeah,
Any candidate, just make sure he's come through SEO for hire first.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like I say, you're great with like the most recent role that we've sort of worked on you with. So yeah, like we're more happy to like work with you moving forwards. And yeah, I think that's great from our side.
No, I appreciate it big time. But listen, we'll let you get on with the rest of your weekend. I know we took you out of your holiday anyway. But thanks for coming on, Henry. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. Great to speak to you both.
Cheers. Have a good one.
Cheers. Bye.